Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. This is it, folks. This is the final round of the Championship number 1. It's episode 12. It's the one where I may or may not get into Kyber, and it's actually quite dramatic the way it finishes. I'm not going to tell you guys what ends up happening. You guys can watch and find out, and I will say that it's really interesting and exciting, and there's just so much frustration and joy and angst and all the different emotions that you may or may not feel on a day-to-day basis, and I have all of that in this episode. It's the stakes are higher than usual just because I'm trying to get into Kyber. I need to be able to win in this episode in order to get there. There's also a possibility that I can get into it using feats, so I will let you guys watch and find out what happens. Moving into this match, my opponent's roster was actually significantly smaller in GP than mine. It was like 300,000 less, which is really surprising considering I have almost always paired with people with a higher GP than me, but that's fine. My opponent had better mods than I did. We had about the same number of Zetas. They had slightly worse gear in terms of total gear 12s, and it was actually looking like a pretty even match. And moving into this match, my opponent had some pretty innocent-looking teams up front. Not that they're necessarily like easy to take out. They were all really well modded, as you might expect from someone who has better mods than me. And I needed to take out 3 kind of high-profile teams alongside an Old Republic team. So I did have the tools available, though. I was really hoping that my opponent didn't just kind of mail it in terms of attacking, and I mean, they could really make my life difficult if all they put was their meta teams in there on defense in the back zone. So I was really kind of counting on them to have saved some on offense. Moving into this match, this is a match that I think is going to be becoming increasingly common unless we get some kind of update to clones. People have been asking me about this a lot. I'm glad that I can finally show you guys another video of beating clones with Commander Luke. Now, you always want to take Shaak Ti out first because every time you hit a clone at all, she gains 20% turn meter. So you do an AoE and she gets a turn. You do a couple, like a combination attack, and she probably gets a turn because not only is she gaining that turn meter from her kit, she's also really fast, and so she's getting a lot of turns. But the reality is here, guys, it's a tough match unless you have 3PO. If you take 3PO with you, it's just kind of a walkthrough. It's pretty simple. I probably didn't need to take Captain Han Solo there. I did take him just in case they ended up getting a good shot on one of my characters and I needed to revive them. But as it turned out, I barely got hit at all. I did get 57 banners, which is, I don't know, it's okay. I was kind of hoping for better, but I was actually killing them so fast that I couldn't regenerate my health, which is kind of hard to complain about, so I'll take it. One of the nice things about having some of the more meta teams up front is that you automatically know what you're going to face going into the match. So I saw Grievous, I knew I was going to take Jedi Revan with Bastila as the lead, and so the turn order here goes, you want to use the turn meter buff / AoE from Revan on Hermit Yoda. Hermit Yoda gives training to Grand Master Yoda, so he trains himself, which is ironic and fun. Then Grandmaster Yoda does his AoE, then he does his Foresight, which then B2 gets enough turn meter. He'd better get enough turn meter without really horrible RNG. He gets enough turn meter to go, he shoots at your guys and misses because everyone has Foresight. He reveals himself, and then Jedi Revan gets another turn and he marks B2 and takes him out. It is absolutely vital to take B2 out right away because B2, every time you're hitting someone else, B2 is taking another turn. And with Jedi Revan and a lot of these Jedi squads with a ton of buffs, you need your buffs, you're dependent on them. And that belligerent a-hole B2 is trying to take them away from you. And so just tell him no and take him out and then you'll be good to go. So now what you're waiting for, once you take out B2, a lot of times you're forced to take out Magna Guard, and that's too bad. You really want to reduce the number of turns that General Grievous is taking, just because he is starting to ramp up his damage every turn. He's getting more and more. So what you're really shooting for is trying to get Mark on him from Jedi Revan. Once you have Mark on General Grievous, then usually it's pretty easy to take him out. If B1 gets a bunch of turns in between, it can be a little tricky because he's going to constantly be healing Grievous, and so you want to be careful about that, but in most cases you're able to just kind of take him out pretty quick. So after that, it's just cleanup, taking out Droidica, trying to heal yourself, and you can kind of see that I'm using my different healing abilities and trying to assist and trying to reduce the number of hits I'm doing on B1 because I want to get as many banners as possible. You know, it's not enough to just win. You want to win with maximum banners if you can, because especially at this level when everyone has the same teams available for offense, you absolutely do need to make sure that you're getting the max banners, because you know that your opponent is going to also be shooting for that max. In this case, a 59 is not really something I'm going to complain about. It's a Gear 13 Grievous. He's doing a ton of damage, and 59 is just fine. Sure, I want 60, but that's just selfish of me. The back zone is actually pretty easy. The Nute team is going to be a little bit of a struggle just because Nest is there and Watt, and it looks a little bit scary, but KRU without max gear is going to be easy for any number of teams that I have. First, I wanted to take out the Old Republic team, and I wanted to take out the Nightsisters, and my go-to against Old Republic is Phoenix. I've been really kind of perfecting this matchup, and I was excited to just jump on in here, and so that's what I did. And at this point, my game crashed again. I crashed 2 episodes ago, and I crashed again. And this crash isn't the same thing as the people who've been getting that bug where their buttons disappear. I think that it's actually something on my end. One of my apps is acting up or something. I've looked into it. I think that I've isolated the problem, but the fact is I was just down 20 banners just like that, just without any kind of warning, without any kind of anything. I was just down that many banners, and that's a huge frustrating thing because I need those banners. I want to be able to win. Having them stolen from me without any kind of warning or anything is entirely too frustrating. Like I was really super tilted, and I decided that I would walk away for a little bit, and I was a little bit proud of myself for being able to walk away and get a little distance. I didn't really need that long to be able to kind of recoup, but if you watched my previous episode, or I think it was 2 ago now, my first match in this round, in this group, I failed against Nest. Like I failed to kill her with Imperial Troopers, and I got kind of tilted, and I lost a bunch of points and made some bad decisions, and it ended up, I don't know if it cost me the round exactly, but it wasn't good. That's not ideal. You don't want to react like that. Like, you want to be in control. If you fail at something, or if something bad happens that you couldn't control, you need to be able to still operate at peak levels. You don't always have the option to be able to do that, but you absolutely do need to be in control if you can. Like, you always need to seek that kind of thing. And so even just taking a 5-minute breather and realizing, I was kind of proud of myself. Like I was kind of triumphant in a way that I knew I was tilted and I needed to take a minute away from it all, and that's what I did. And then I was able to come into this match with kind of a clear head, and even though it wasn't ideal to have lost against this team, this really awful team, this degenerate scum team, I was happy that I was able to approach it with a clear head, and I used a really good team to be able to counter it. So I knew I was thinking correctly. And First Order is such a good squad, guys. I know I haven't really talked that much about this match at all, but First Order counters a ton of things, and I would highly recommend working on them. Them and Troopers, both of those are excellent squads to be able to take out a lot of different teams. They're just kind of toolbox teams. They can't take out meta teams, but you're not always going to face meta teams in Grand Arena Championships. Like, that's one of the great things about Grand Arena is you get to use some of your B teams or C teams even, and being able to have a team that can consistently get max banners. Like, I got 40 here. 60 was the max, of course, previously before that awful crash, but that's just not First Order's fault. It's someone else's fault. First Order are blameless in this, and so the fact that they were able to march in there, get me max banners for them, is wonderful. And I don't think that I can complain. So the final match in this zone is using Padme against the Nightsisters, and this is kind of just the go-to against Nightsisters lately. They did have a couple Gear 13s here. The Zombie and Asajj were both Gear 13, and honestly, I don't mean to say anything bad about my opponent here. I do think that maybe I would have chosen different Nightsisters to get Gear 13 on first. Daka, for instance, that she was my first target. Asajj is probably my second choice to get 13 on. But now with relics, I would actually go for a different order altogether. Like, maybe Daka still, because she benefits so much from relics. But then after that, I would advise going for Spirit. Like, getting Spirit up to Gear 13 and then start putting some relics on her. Like, that team gets nasty really fast. And the damage you can do, and your ability to kind of just one-shot people with Nightsisters is tremendous. So Spirit is absolutely the one that I've been focusing on in terms of higher relic levels, and I'll continue to do so. But that being said, this match, I mean, I've talked about it a million times. If you want more commentary on how to approach it, I would advise looking on the Grand Arena counters sheet that I have linked in the video description. I have all of the different teams that I've used against all the different teams that I've fought, and a link to the video therein, and it's a great resource. I would highly recommend you guys check it out. So moving into the next zone, I saw a standard Geonosian squad and a team I'd never really seen before with Old Ben, and so I decided to take out the Old Ben squad first. So I've already hit rock bottom here in terms of, like, something bad happened to me was not under my control, or at least not at that moment under my control. So it felt wonderful to be able to make a bad decision on my own here, and I took Imperial Troopers against this Old Ben team, and completely forgetting that Wampa has days, and I actually think that I would have been fine here, but then I crashed again, a second time, and that really just ruined me. I was so frustrated. Drop another 20 banners. Maybe I wouldn't have won that one anyways with Troopers. I don't know. Like, in hindsight, it's kind of a bad choice. I had other better teams that could handle that team, frankly, but, like, crashing again, oh man. So I had to completely replan what I was going to do, and it meant that I got to use Ewoks once again. I had the opportunity to get those little guys doing something for me. So they're actually a pretty good team. They're pretty versatile in terms of, like, teams that they can counter, but I mean, they can always beat First Order. You saw that First Order got first turn here even, and gave the Ewoks kind of a pretty good punch to start with, and the Ewoks have regained their footing, and they're just fine. They're just rolling. You want to take out First Order Officer first, because he's so easy to take out. Then you want to take out everyone but the 2 Kylos. Like, it doesn't really matter what order. I generally save Executioner for third, because everyone else is squishier than Executioner. And you want to take out the guys who deal damage but are easy to take out. And then after this, it's just kind of an annoying slog of trying to punch hard enough that Kylo doesn't regenerate his health and protection every time you hit him. And you'll see, like, there'll be times that I hit him and he actually heals. Like, it actually heals him with me hitting him, because when you hit him, then he gains buffs, and when he gains buffs, or he's getting these debuffs that also give him protection and health and whatever. You just can't necessarily always count on being able to do damage. Like, I did that big assist and he went from yellow to green, and so after that I kind of I realized, okay, I'm only going to hit him with Wicket, and beyond that I am just going to start hitting the other Kylo. Oh, well, there is where I finally realized it. So I'm a little bit slow on the intake here, or the uptake, or whatever the take is. But First Order is such an interesting match for Ewoks. It just doesn't seem like Ewoks should be able to take them out, and sometimes it's pretty close. Like, there was one time that I definitely spent all 4 minutes and 59 seconds to take them out. That actually happens more than I'd care to admit. I don't necessarily take the entire clock, but it goes into the less than 1 minute area quite often, and really, like, the hardest part is taking out the two Kylos, because they're just regenerating so much health, and they both have stacking defense when you're hitting them. Or maybe that's just this Kylo, but they both have these different mechanics that keep them resilient to small hits, and Ewoks are kind of the kings of small hits, which means it seems like First Order would be a bad choice for Ewoks to try to tackle, but as it stands, the Ewoks do just fine. However, I did have to use Ewoks against First Order, which meant 55 banners. There wasn't much in the way of getting around that. Maybe people with better Ewok squads can do better. I know that Wicket has a small amount of protection regen on one of his moves, like his AoE helps, but that's not really enough to mitigate that damage. So I would have preferred to use Jedi Training Rey against them, because I can usually get 60 banners, but as I was talking about previously, I wasn't able to do that. So now the First Order is down, I'm able to allocate some resources into taking out this Wampa team, and the very first target needs to be Wampa. Like, he's the only one who does any kind of credible damage. I guess Turret can do some decent crits every once in a while, but it's not something that I'm super worried about. This team is actually fairly annoying. Like, there's 3 different tanks, and they all taunt pretty well and take damage pretty well and are very resilient. And then Wampa's just supposedly hiding behind them, but Jedi Training Rey just kind of doesn't care about that. So if we're just kind of looking at this team as a whole, like, Jedi Training Rey is probably the ideal counter in the first place. Like, I am frustrated that I crashed with the troopers, but I think that was a poor choice to begin with. So I don't really know who to blame or what to blame. I think it's just frustrating that it happened at all. But as you can see here, this team is actually showing a slight bit of resilience, as you might have expected with it being a team with a ton of tanks and everything. But once Wampa's gone, like, there's no real scary part to it. Like, the scary part is, can I get max banners or not? And the answer is yes, I think so. If you take Finn, like, Finn is great. He can heal you. You get the whatever destiny, illuminated destiny from BB-8 that can heal protection and health, give you turn meter. And all I will say is that in this match, they dodged a bunch of times, and it was frustrating and annoying, and I still got 40 banners. So please, devs, if you ever consider doing a dodge meta, please don't ever do that. That's a bad idea, and you should feel bad for even considering it. So at this point, I only have to face 2 more teams until I get the full clear, and getting a full clear is really important in just trying to get into Kyber. I really needed to be able to full clear, but luckily I had the right teams available. I still had my Darth Revan team. I had to choose which squad I wanted to use which on, and I eventually just decided to use my Traya team. At this point, there was no way that I was going to get the undersized squad's feat, and so I just decided to load up my Traya team and make sure that I didn't lose just by virtue of them taking out multiple guys. I wanted to get as many banners as possible. I figured that 55 and higher where it was acceptable, and so that's what I did. I also took Thrawn because here, instead of some kind of like tank or something who was more resilient, I took Thrawn because he was faster than any of my opponent's Geonosians, and that led me to be able to give turn meter directly to Traya. Traya put isolate onto the brute, and the brute having isolate means that he's not going to help assist, and so I'm having less damage to me. He's not getting hurt from all the assists the way all the other Geonosians are, but at the same time, like, having him out of the rotation for hitting, like, I got hit a ton of times, and he actually does hit pretty hard. Anyways, after he's isolated, the whole team is significantly reduced because he's not contributing to the rest of them, really, I mean, at this point, I've just won the match. They're all fish in a barrel, because bugs in a barrel is significantly less interesting as a metaphor, and I've taken the win. Now all I have to really concentrate is making sure that I'm getting the most banners possible, and really, like, the only way you can do that is Thrawn has a little bit of that protection regen, and Scion can kind of do it, and then you just kind of hope that everyone else just has their health and protection, which turned out pretty well. Like 57 banners is a solid amount for Geonosians versus Traya. Like, easily one of my characters could have died and I'd be down to 54 right there. So I was just glad that I had my Darth Revan team available for this team, because I did not necessarily have all the counter teams available that I would want to use against this, and taking Jedi Revan, or rather Darth Revan, against this team is just kind of a luxury. Even though they had a slow Tenacious Nest, which is frustrating to use with Revan, you can still do some pretty filthy things to this team, and so I took an understrength squad just because I wanted to maximize banners. I didn't really care about the understrength feat, but just trying to go here and get as many banners as possible, because if my opponent does end up failing a couple of their attacks, I needed to be able to have as much of a tiebreaker as possible, I guess, and so that was really just my approach here. Even if something bad happens, guys, I would highly recommend just focus on trying to maximize your banners regardless. Like, I know I've gotten sloppy at times. It's hard not to. I get it, trust me, but really just always practice maximizing your banners if you can. It is just really going to help you long term, and maybe you don't want my help, but that's my advice. So this squad, I think, is going to actually be pretty frustrating. My opponent's Nute was not as fast as my arena level Darth Revan, and that would be shocking if they were. But moving into this final phase of the fight, like, Nest just counters a lot and does a lot of irritating things, and it kind of makes you nervous because she's consistently getting stronger. Every time you're hitting her, she's getting stronger, and you want to make sure that she's, I don't know, not getting stronger. If you can stop her from countering, that's great. And eventually I was able to just stun her, and now I can just do basics and try to recharge my health and protection, which most of these guys are capable of doing. I think maybe HK isn't capable of it, but otherwise the rest of them can. And so eventually, once Nest took a turn, I was able to hit her. She didn't actually die, but then she didn't have quite enough health or bonus protection to screen her, so I was able to take her out. So in the end, 1864 banners. That's not a great score. It would have been a lot better if I had been able to add 20 to it from those crashes, but I was able to win. And pretty quick after I had attacked, my opponent started attacking and took out my Geos, but dropped 13 banners from that, so I was good with that. Like that's an actually great result for me. And I should add at this point that I was not going to be able to get into Kyber with just feats. If I didn't win this match, I would not get into Kyber. That was the start and end of it. It didn't matter that I had a kind of lowish score. I would absolutely get into Kyber if I was able to win this match. So the first zone, my opponent dropped 17 banners, which is almost as good as a failed attack, and they were attacking my nest team next. That's a lot of times where people trip up against me, and looks like I got lucky. They apparently used their Jedi Training Ray team against it and couldn't kill nest, so really happy with that result, obviously, because that's another 20 banners dropped. And I was immediately greeted by the fact that my opponent dropped 0 banners against my Palpatine squad. So not my favorite result, obviously, but I wasn't able to watch as each attack went on, but I was able to check in pretty frequently, and they eventually, once they had cleared 3 of my zones, they dropped 53. So they were really close, actually, to my total score, that they just needed to drop 4 more, and I would be able to get the win. And those are 2 fairly strong squads in the clone zone, so to speak, and they did, in fact, drop enough banners that I got the win. I won by 2 banners, which is huge. That meant that I would be able to make it into Kyber. I thought that maybe my opponent had taken it easy on me, and he said that he'd done nothing that he could have done better. So he also even just told me what teams that he used against me. So you can see it on the screen. I'm not going to read it out loud for you, but it's a pretty interesting thing to be able to see that what my opponent used to counter me. I was pretty excited about it. My Dooku team was probably going to need to change by the time next Grand Arena comes around. I'm going to have to change up my defenses significantly anyways, because people are going to start learning all of my stuff, and even as I'm getting more subscribers, and I really appreciate that, that also means that more people are going to know how to counter me. So in the end, I did get the win against my opponent, just barely, by 2 banners, and I got an entire Zeta mat for that, and some random mod upgrade things, so that's great, I guess. Pat on the head. I also got, once the timer for the Grand Arena match went off, I got into the Kyber League, which is the end goal always. The rewards are fine, they're not outstanding, but more Zetas are always welcome, and Omegas especially. So I didn't get to the highest tier of Grand Arena, that's for sure, rather of Kyber, but I'll take it. I mean, Kyber is Kyber. That's the pinnacle. That's where people are striving for. You know, it's like, how successful were you in Grand Arena this season? Well, I made Kyber. Oh, then it was a successful season. Yes, absolutely. And that's how I feel. This was great. I ended up going 10-2. I wish I could have gotten a little better than that and maybe placed a little higher, but as it stands, guys, I mean, I'm pretty pleased. I think that in the end I'll settle at somewhere around between 400 and 500, which is great. Division 1. All my opponents are really challenging. A lot of people who are spending a lot of money, and you know, I spend a little bit, but it's great to be able to compete with these guys who are spending like thousands. You know, no judgment on them, of course. It's just we happen to be at the same level in terms of rosters, and so I'm excited that I'm able to even compete at all. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna wrap this thing up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.